Welcome back, everyone. This week we'll be making some Taiwanese beef noodle soup. It's been cold here for the last couple of weeks, so I wanted to make something nice and hearty. We'll be starting off with 2 pounds of beef hind shank and 1 pound of beef tendon. What we'll be doing is bringing a pot of water up to a boil, and then we'll be boiling the beef tendon and the hind shank for about 10 minutes each. Then we'll be skimming all the scum off until it's all clean. Here you can see we have the beef tendon ready to go. We'll bring it up to a boil, keep skimming the scum off for about 10 minutes, and then we'll switch over to the hind shank and we'll do the same thing. Afterwards, we'll be rinsing everything off with cold water to make sure it's nice and clean. So I finished the beef tendon and now we switched over to the hind shank. As you can see, it's up to a nice boil. I'm just constantly scooping all the scum out. This will probably keep going on for about another 5 to 10 minutes. And like I said, it's really important to do this step if you want a nice, good tasting soup. Otherwise, all these impurities will mar the flavor of your soup. So we'll keep this up until there's no more scum coming out, and then we'll rinse everything out under cold water. So I pulled out the beef tendon and the beef hind shank, rinsed out under cold water, and here's what it looks like. As you can tell, it's nice and clean. And now we'll be ready to move on to our next step. Alright, so moving on to the rest of our ingredients. As you can see, I have 1 bowl of garlic that I've just cut the bottom off of. I also have 1 bunch of green onions that I've roughly cut up. I reserved the white parts for topping later on. Also, as you can see, I have a 2-inch nub of ginger that I've sliced into about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch thick coins. Over here, I have 2 shallots that I peeled and split apart. Underneath that, I have 1 Fuji apple that I've roughly cut up into cubes, 4 tomatoes that have been diced, and underneath all that, 1 large carrot that's been diced up as well. And moving on, as you can see here, we have a mix of a couple different pastes. I have 1 tablespoon of soybean paste, 1 tablespoon of spicy soybean paste, and another tablespoon of spicy broad bean paste. Alright, so for our spices, over here you can see I have 1 tablespoon of dried goji berries, 1 teaspoon of fennel seeds, 1 teaspoon of Szechuan peppercorns, 2 star anise, 1 cinnamon stick, and finally 1 small sliver of dried licorice. Now I've heated up a pot over medium-high heat with about 1/4 cup of canola oil. I put in my green onions, ginger, and garlic, and we're going to basically saute this for a few minutes until it gets nice and aromatic. Next, we'll be adding our soybean paste, as you can see right here. Followed by that, we'll be adding our liquid here, which is composed of 1/2 cup of aged soy sauce, 1/2 cup of dark soy sauce, and 1 cup of Chinese rice wine. So it's real important that when you add the paste into the pan, that it gets nice and caramelized before you use the liquid to just kind of act as a deglaze. You definitely want to cook off all the wine, otherwise it's not going to taste very good. So the soybean paste have been cooking for a few minutes now. As you can see, it's nice and caramelized. Now it's time to add our soy sauce, rice wine mixture. It's real important that when we put this in here, it'll deglaze our pan, so you scrape up all the nice caramelized stuff at the bottom, and also spend a few minutes to properly cook off all the alcohol from the wine. So it's been a few minutes now, and our alcohol aroma is cooked off. So I've added the fruits and vegetables, as you can see here. We have our tomatoes, shallots, carrots, and apple. To this, we're going to add 2 chunks of yellow rock sugar. We'll mix that around a little bit, and then after that, we'll add our hind shank and our tendon, along with our spices. Instead of using the stove, I'm going to use an Instant Pot and make this a lot faster. Instead of 3 to 4 hours of cooking, this would be about 45 minutes worth of cook time. I just put all the liquid along with the spices, the hind shank, and the tendons into this Instant Pot. Added about 4 cups of water to it. Just make sure it does not go beyond the max fill line. If you need to use less than 4 cups, that's totally fine. We'll be diluting out the soup later. Like I said, just pop it on for about 45 minutes and then we'll be done. Alright, so it's been about 45 minutes. I just waited about 10 minutes before I released all the pressure. So I just pulled out the hind shank. It looks pretty good. Feels quite tender. We just don't want it to fall apart. You still want some bite to it, otherwise it'll be kind of annoying to eat. Now I'm going to strain out the soup back into our stock pot, and we'll add about 5 quarts of water to that. I brought the stock pot up to a boil. I'm just going to reduce it down just a little bit more. I added about 2 teaspoons of kosher salt and another tablespoon of soy sauce. Some of the tendon was still a bit tough, so I threw it back into the soup. By the time it's done reducing for about another 15 to 20 minutes, it'll be nice and tender again. Moving over to our left, we'll be preparing our bok choy to top on our soup. All I'm doing is just briefly blanching in some boiling water. The bok choy, just trimmed the ends off and cleaned off the leaves. It should take more than a minute or two to boil, and then we'll be good. This is what our bok choy is going to look like after it's done blanching. Beef hind shank is cooled down for about 10 to 15 minutes. All I've done here is just slice it into about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch thick slices against the grain. I've also cut the tendon up into smaller bite-sized pieces. Now we'll be preparing our pickled mustard greens. I took 1 package of pickled mustard greens, sliced it up, crushed 5 cloves of garlic, chopped that up, and sliced up 1 Thai bird's eye chili. Just stir fried it with a little bit of oil, and then added 2 tablespoons of sugar to it and cooked it until it's done. Now it's time to prepare our Chinese wheat noodles. I'm sticking 1 bundle here. I'll be throwing it in some boiling water. Should only take about 2 or 3 minutes at the most to cook. After that's done, just drain it out and rinse it under cold water just to stop the cooking process. So here is our finished product. To our 1 bundle of noodles, I added about 1/2 teaspoon of soy sauce and 1/2 teaspoon of sesame oil as well, along with 1 teaspoon of Chinese black vinegar. Here's our blanched bok choy. We have our pickled mustard greens, a couple slices of our hind shank, some cilantro, and some green onions. You're more than welcome to add the tendon if you like. If you don't, it's okay. It's mostly just there to add richness to the soup. But if you like tendon, please go ahead and add it. Also forgot to mention that it's real important to add this spicy chili crisp. Adds a lot of really good flavor to the soup as well. It's good stuff.
Alright, so I know like a lot of people may not be familiar with the stuff that I used in this recipe. So here's the soy sauce that I used, the aged soy sauce, my dark soy sauce, the Chinese rice wine. Let's see if it'll focus for me. There we go. Ish. The spicy soybean paste, regular soybean paste, and the basically a broad bean paste. It's also called doubanjiang. I got the rock sugar here. These are the goji berries and the dried licorice.